Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodhi, and I am your host, and this is my third attempt at recording this episode. Um, we are not recording late for this episode because I didn't have time to record it, because I did. I actually started recording it on Tuesday with the expectation of finishing it on Wednesday. It's a long one. This is Tesla's Q1 2025 earnings call, and it's an hour and a half long, 90 minutes long. So my intention was to record some on Wednesday and the rest on Thursday because I knew it was going to take a little bit more time. At first, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put the whole earnings call out there. I was going to add my analysis, or I did, because I actually recorded a little bit of this already. I would add my analysis to it, but I was going to let you hear the entire earnings call because I do think, and I think that's important, especially with what's going on with Tesla at the moment. The problem with that is I was about 20 minutes into the earnings call, and I had recorded for 45 minutes of content, like with my takes and the earnings call. I was already at 45 minutes, and that's not sustainable. Like, you don't want to be here and listen to this podcast and the earnings call for 3 hours. Like, that's not going to work for anybody. So then I was like, well, I'll cut it down. In the earnings call, Elon brought up his work with Doge and some stuff with tariffs, which that's important. But and his work with the Trump administration, and he said some things that I did not see that there was evidence to support, and some of them were a little bit conspiracy theory-esque. And by the way, I see similar but different conspiracy theories on the other side of the aisle. So I don't want to. I'm not interested in broadcasting a specific narrative from any particular group. And while I was going to keep that in there because I do think it's important and it's part of the story, in the end, I decided, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to cut out all the political stuff because while I do find value in it, I don't think there's enough value to warrant the amount of time that you would have to sit and listen through it. So I will put the link in the show notes. You can go back and listen to it. It's at the very beginning of his opening remarks if you want to hear the political stuff. A lot of it has to do with paid protesters and people who were either lost money through Doge cutting programs or people who lost their jobs uh, targeting Tesla. And there's no, like I said, there's no evidence that that's happening on any scale that's significant. It might be happening at small scale, sure, but it's not the mass attack of Tesla that Elon is portraying it to be. And by the way, in the same way, when Donald Trump was running for president, I read a lot of articles about how he was filling arenas with paid actors. This is a very popular thing to do when you want to minimize what one candidate is doing over another. You just say, "Oh, they're paid actors. They're being paid to be there. They don't really want to be there, whatever." Um, I don't see any evidence to support that either. I know people who go to these rallies and they seem to have a lot of fun, and you know, I mean, objectively, they seem like to be a good time for the people who go there. So I can kind of see why people would want to go and be a part of that community event, regardless of what's being said there. If you just take all of the politics out of it, and you go to a big party and people are having a lot of fun and getting along and high fiving, that's fun. Take the politics out of it. I don't want emails on this, please. I'm just saying specifically, I didn't see any evidence that there was any wide scale um, payment to people who go to Trump rallies. Maybe a little bit. I don't know. Maybe that did happen a little bit, but the vast majority of the people who went there because they wanted to be there, not because they were paid to be there. So what I'm saying here is it's very easy for one side or another to take a narrative to diminish the other side. And I don't see that as being productive. And while I think it's important, this isn't a politics podcast. You can go and listen to, you know, politics. Go listen to We're Not Wrong. Andrew Heaton's gotten a good politics. The Midas Touch if you're into that kind of stuff. There's their Bulwark. There's lots of political podcasts out there that you can go and listen to. So I decided to cut that part out. But I do think it's worth mentioning. You just don't have to listen to the whole thing. So yeah, so this is going to be an earnings call very similar to the ones in the past. I went through a lot of learning in the last 2 days. This will be an earnings call that's similar to the past, except it's going to be a little bit longer because Tesla's, to their credit, they had a bad quarter. And instead of Elon talking for 20 minutes and their CFO talking for 20 minutes, and then they, did 10 minutes of say.com questions. And then, they had, let's say, I don't know, 10 more minutes left for analysts. They didn't do that. They were like, you know what? We're going to let the analysts have their questions too. So I will applaud Tesla for doing that because they didn't have to. They could have very easily just left it at, an hour and not covered any of that stuff. So good job to Tesla for doing that. That probably wasn't easy for them to do. Now, having said that, what did I think of the earnings call? Because I've listened to this thing multiple times at this point. I was underwhelmed. I don't think the team, and I'm including the whole team, not just Elon, I don't think the team did a very good job of selling that the future for Tesla is bright. Like, Tesla makes great products, don't get me wrong. And I love my Model Y. I don't know that I would hesitate to buy another Tesla in the future, but I buy cars every 10 years, so we'll see what happens in 10 years. But the they went through, they played their old hits. We're at the stage of Tesla's being a company where they're just rehashing what they've already said. And I don't know that that really gives anybody, I don't know that that makes anybody excited. Again, I think the new Model Y is great. I love my Model Y. I don't have ill feelings towards a car company because it's not a thing. It's not a person. It's a company. And, if you have ill feelings towards the brand, I think that's, great. I'll support your ill feelings, or if you have feelings of fondness towards it, also. But my way of looking at this is it's a brand, not a person. So, and that's how I look at all companies because they're companies. There are some companies that I like more than others, but as a general rule, they don't have feelings. They're companies. The people inside them have feelings, but the actual, it's a corporation. It's devoid of feelings as a corporation. So, yeah. So hopefully that helps you decide at this point if you want to continue listening to this episode or not. We're going to start off with Elon's opening remarks. Like I said, I did cut the opening remarks up to exclude some things that I didn't think were particularly interesting, or like I said, that were political. So we're going to start off with the heart of Elon's opening remarks. And one of the things that bugs me about Elon, and like, this isn't a huge annoyance to me, but everything is in crisis when he speaks. Everything is the worst thing ever, and if it doesn't get fixed, the company or whatever is going to go away. And I don't think that's a very a realistic way of approaching things, because it is much more nuanced than that. Just like, and I spend a lot of time on TikTok because I love TikTok, but just like when I see on TikTok that say that Tesla's doomed and it's going away and the company's crumbling, it's not. They had a bad quarter. If they have several bad quarters, then that's a problem. But they had a bad quarter, and companies have bad quarters. So the hyperbole in our world today drives me up the wall. So, all right, having said that, let's go ahead and jump in because I've been talking for 10 minutes. Goodness gracious. Let's go ahead and jump into Elon's opening remarks, edited opening remarks.
So at Tesla, we've gone through many a crisis over the years, um, and actually been through many near death experiences. Like we felt like we're on the ragged edge of death, at least, and maybe a dozen times. It's been so many times. This is not one of those times. We're not on the ragged edge of death, not even close. Um, so, but there are some challenges, and I expect that this year will be. There'll probably be some unexpected bumps this year, uh, but I remain extremely optimistic about the future of the company. Um, future of the company is fundamentally based on uh, large-scale autonomous cars, uh, and large-scale, large volume, vast numbers of autonomous humanoid robots. So the the value of a company that makes truly useful autonomous humanoid robots and autonomous useful vehicles at scale at low cost, which is what Tesla's going to do, is staggering. Um, I continue to believe that Tesla, with excellent execution, will be the most valuable company in the world by far. But that's an important if. We must execute well. Um, but if we do execute well, um, I think Tesla will be the most valuable company in the world by far. It may be as valuable as the next 5 companies combined. So, but there'll be a few bumps along the road before that happens. I said, I think on the last earnings call that we'll start to see the prosperity of autonomy take effect in a material way around the middle of next year. Well, we still expect to have be selling fully autonomous rides in June in Austin, as we've been saying for now several months. So that's continued. But the real question from a financial standpoint is, when does it really become material and affect the bottom line of the company, and start to be a fundamental part of the when does it move the financial needle in a significant way? That's probably around the middle of next year, second half of next year. And then once it does start to move the financial needle in a significant way, it will really go exponential from there. So I'd encourage people to look beyond like the, uh, sort of bumps and potholes of the road immediately ahead of us, but lift your gaze to the bright, shining, citadel on a hill. I don't know, some Reagan-esque imagery, and that's where we're headed. And not too distant future, like I said, end of next year type thing. So, let's see.
Did that inspire you in any way, shape, or form? Do you think Elon believed what he was saying there? Now, I'm not going to tell you if he did believe it or didn't, because I don't know. But man, it did not leave me inspired, if I'm being honest. He talked in vague generalities around his products. He talked a little bit about full self-driving, like robotaxis being profitable the middle of next year. I would be surprised if that's the case. In order for that to be the case, there are a couple of things has to happen. One is Tesla needs to be in more cities than Austin and LA. And right now they're just going to be in Austin, right? Elon will talk a little bit later in the earnings call about how he thinks, once you solve for one city, you can just go and do this in another city in the US or China or whatever. And, some of that might be true, but you have to get through regulatory approval for that to happen. The other thing that makes me kind of wonder how valid his point is here, at least initially, the rides are going to be very cheap, and you have to have a significant number of rides before you make any money. I can't remember what the exact numbers ended up being, but at the Cybercab event, Elon mentioned it. And if I was to put my Tesla on the robotaxi network, um, I wouldn't make very much money. It would take a while before I made anything, and then I'm putting miles and time on my car. Now, if Tesla wants to do that with their cars, that's great, but they have to pay for the car, they have to pay taxes. I don't know, they have to pay engineers. And what they're charging, at least initially, is a very low number. And I think that, if they wanted to just eat the cost and make this just an affordable thing for people to drive around, I think that's great. But I don't think they're going to want to eat the cost for very long. So, will it be profitable? Most likely someday if they can get it off the ground. But will it be profitable the middle of next year? I highly doubt that. There's a lot of scale that needs to happen before they can be profitable. Like if they want to do this in Europe, I don't even think full self-driving is approved in Europe yet. I know they're trying, but I don't think it's approved in Europe. It's kind of approved in China, but they had to put a pause on it, and it's not called full self-driving. Tesla had to call it something else because it's not full self-driving. So because of this, I would be I'm skeptical that it will be in profitable next year, much less any meaningful. Like I think they're going to lose money on it, is what I'm saying. And if they don't lose money on it, whatever they're bringing in terms of dollars to make it profitable, it won't be a significant part of their budget. Now, having said that, like there are people out there who think this is a big mistake, that Tesla's going to fail, and the whole company is going to come crumbling down around the Tesla's robotaxi efforts. I don't think that's the case. Tesla could fail at robotaxi, and they can still be a really valuable company. All right, let's move on with Elon's remarks.
With respect to supply chain risk, something that Tesla has been working on for several years is to localize supply chains. Um, this actually makes sense from a cost standpoint, and from a logistics risk standpoint. Um, is to have the supply chains be at least located on the continent in which the car is built. And so we are, I think, the least affected car company with respect to tariffs, at least in most respects. I mean, it remains to be seen. Um, now, tariffs are still, tough on a company when margins are still low. Um, but we do have localized supply chains in North America, Europe, and China. So that puts us in a stronger position than any of our competitors.
I think that localizing supply chain is a great idea. So I applaud Tesla for doing that. Next up, we're going to hear why Elon is excited about the company and where it's going.
Now, let me walk you through why I'm so excited about the future of Tesla. So, first of all, autonomy. The team and I are laser focused on bringing robotaxi to Austin this year. Unsupervised autonomy will first be solved for the Model Y in Austin, and then actually we should parse out the terms for robotic taxi or robotaxi, and just generally like what's the Cybercab, because we've got a product called the Cybercab, and then but any uh, Tesla, which could be an S3, X, or Y that is autonomous, is a robotic taxi or robotaxi. It's very confusing. So the vast majority of the Tesla fleet that we've made is capable of being a robotaxi or robotic taxi. Um, and as we're going from you know, once we can make the system work where you can have paid rides fully autonomously with no one in the car in one city, that that is a very scalable thing for us to go broadly within with whatever jurisdiction allows us to operate. So because what we're solving for is a general solution to autonomy, not a city specific solution for autonomy. Uh, Once we make it work in a few cities, we can basically make it work in all cities in that in that legal jurisdiction. So if it's once we can make it basically work in a few cities in America, we can make it work anywhere in America. Once we can make it work in a few cities in China, it can work anywhere in China. Likewise in Europe, um, limited only by regulatory approvals. Um, so this is the advantage of having a generalized solution using artificial intelligence and the an AI chip that Tesla designed specifically for this purpose, um, as opposed to very expensive sensors and high precision maps of a particular neighborhood where that neighborhood may change or often changes, and then the cost stops working. So we're a general solution instead of a specific solution.
Okay. So a couple different things. One, they're going to roll out the Model Ys if it's not clear in Austin initially. It's not going to be the Cybercabs. It's going to be the Model Ys. Difference between Cybercab is the product. Robotaxi is the service that people can attach their vehicles to if they so choose. Now, I went back to look at what Elon said at the Cybercab event about how much Tesla will charge per mile if you take a ride. And right now, that is 20 cents per mile. Um, let's say that you put your car on Tesla's robotaxi service, right? Let me get a piece of paper here. That's got a pen. Here we go. So you put your car on. You have to drive, or the car has to drive 1,000 miles before you see $200. I don't know how many miles that's going to be in a day, but um, you know, say over a week, your car drives 1,000 miles for you. That's an extra $200 a week. That's not too shabby, but you have to split that with Tesla. We don't know what that split is going to be, but we can make some assumptions. And what we do know for sure is that you are going to you're if the car is a vehicle that you're driving, you're going to put a certain percentage of that 40,000 miles on your tires. And I'm using tires because there's not a lot of maintenance to do for electric vehicles. So I'm using tires as an example. Um, so, you're looking at $1,300 to replace your tires. I just replaced mine. It was just under $1,300. So 20 cents a mile, 40,000 miles, that's $8,000. And how it breaks down beyond that is a little bit more of a mystery because we don't know, and it would be unreasonable to demand to know at this point more of the information on how Tesla plans on setting up their pricing structure. But based on the 20 cents that they told us, like I said, that's $8,000, which is, over 40,000 miles. Are you going to put your car on the robotaxi network for 40,000 miles and get $8,000? That's probably, uh, let's just say generously, you do that over 2 years, $4,000 a year. You got to pay taxes. Like I said, you got to replace your tires, whatever maintenance come up. You got to pay for electricity to charge your vehicle, unless Tesla has some sort of service set up for robo taxis. But I would imagine it's just easier to charge at home. And yeah, so I'm not poo pooing the robo taxi service because I think it's awesome. Like when I get old, when I get really old and I can't drive anymore, I want something like this. I want something like Waymo. I want to be able to still be mobile. My grandparents, when I grew up in Alaska, when it was snowing, I'm not sure my grandparents left their their house very often, except for my grandma to go to bingo and my grandpa to go to the bar. And that was it. That was they may have gone out to dinner, but they didn't do a lot of driving. They didn't do a lot of getting out of the house because it's too much of a hassle for them. I don't want to do that when I'm old. Like, I want to live as full of a life as I humanly can, and I want things like robotaxi to be around. All I'm saying is that for Tesla to have this service, right, and say that it's going to be profitable at the numbers that they have reported to us, it seems unlikely that it will be profitable. If they charge more money, like $1 a mile or 80 cents a mile, then yeah, that could actually be a pretty sweet deal. But then that makes the cost of riding for people who want to ride in these vehicles, it makes that go up as well. So it'll be interesting for sure. Now, let's go ahead and jump back in to Elon's remarks.
So let's see. With respect to energy, our energy business is doing very well. Um, the Megapack enables utility companies to output far more total energy than would otherwise be the case. When you think of the energy capability of a grid, it's much more than say total energy output per year. Is if the power plants could operate at peak power for all 24 hours, as opposed to being at half power, sometimes a quarter power at night, then you could double the energy output uh, of existing power plants. But in order to do that, you need to buffer the energy so that you can charge up the something like battery pack at night and then discharge into the grid during the day. So this is a massive unlock on total energy output of any given grid over the course of a year. And utility companies are beginning to realize this and are buying in our mega packs at scale. So at this point, a gigawatt class battery is quite a common thing. So we have many orders in the hopper for gigawatt and beyond batteries. And we expect the stationary energy storage business to scale ultimately to terawatts.
All right, that was Elon's energy update. He did mention Optimus Robot. There wasn't a lot of detail. He said he thinks that they can scale Optimus to 1 million units a year by 2030, maybe 29. That seems optimistic. That seems optimistic. I was trying to make a pun, but failed. One of the places I think we can look for whether or not Tesla will be able to actually achieve that is BYD actually has their humanoid robot now, and they I think they're going to charge 10,000, the equivalent of 10,000 US dollars for it. So it'll be interesting to look and see how BYD does with their Optimus or their humanoid robot. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly the same as Tesla's, but it is something that it's depending on how BYD does, and it sounds like they're going to be starting to release these things in the summertime. Depending on how BYD does, I think would be a good bellwether for how Tesla's going to do. So keep an eye on it. Next up, we're going to get a report on the cars, Tesla cars. And to kind of save a little bit of time here, Elon says that the first quarter is usually a little down for car orders because nobody wants to go out into a blizzard and buy a car. And that's true. I don't know if that's exactly why first quarter sales are down. However, one of the premises of selling a Tesla is that you don't have to do that. You can just order it from the comfort of your house next to the fire, drinking hot cocoa. So I don't, not saying he's wrong here. I'm just saying that the whole premise of ordering a Tesla is you can do it in 5 minutes. All right, let's listen in and see what Elon has to say.
Now, Q1, first quarters of a year are usually pretty tricky, because it's usually the worst quarter of the year because people uh, don't want to go buy a car in the middle of winter during a blizzard. So, um, and this so we picked Q1 as like a good quarter to do a a cutover to the new version of the Model Y, and we changed production of the world's best-selling cars. With remembering the Model Y is the best-selling car of any kind on Earth, with a 1.1 billion unit per year output. Simple model.
And it's also worth noting that the Model Y is the most American-made vehicle, according to Cars.com 2024 index. The Model Y is number one, Honda Passport is number two, ID4 for Volkswagen is number three, the Model S is number four, and the Honda Odyssey is number five. Let's see, just keeping it on Tesla here. The Model X is number nine. So yeah, three out of the four, I guess five vehicles that Tesla sells are in the top 10. So that's pretty impressive. We're gonna move on. We're gonna skip the financial report, and we're gonna move on to the retail investor questions. And these are going to be edited significantly too, because some of these, some of them, they go off into the weeds a little bit. So I'm going to try to keep it specifically with the information that the question asks for, and not so much um, the added exposition that sometimes gets added in.
Well, just to let's just talk by the just disambiguate the cyber cab from robotaxi once again. um, so when will the Teslas, because the Teslas that will be fully autonomous in June in Austin will be Model Ys. Um, so that is that's currently on track to be able to do paid rides fully autonomously in Austin in June, um, and and then to be in many other cities in the U.S. by the end of this year. Um, it's very difficult. It's difficult to predict the exact ramp, sort of week by week, month by month, except that it will ramp up very quickly. So it's going to be like basically an S curve where it's very difficult to predict the intermediate slope of the S curve, but you kind of know where the S curve is going to end up, which is the vast majority of the Tesla fleet being autonomous. So that's why I feel confident in predicting large scale autonomy around the middle of next year. But certainly the second half of next year. Meaning, I predict that there will be millions of Teslas operating autonomously, fully autonomously, in the second half of next year.
What if there's not millions of Teslas operating autonomously by the end of next year? Now, I'm going to give Elon the benefit of the doubt here and say that he is talking about full self-driving as a whole and not robotaxi. Um, Maybe he is talking about robotaxi. I see that as being even less of a chance. But Elon has said this over and over again for the last 10 years or 9 years since 2016. So what are the repercussions if this isn't the case? You know, I don't necessarily think it's the team's fault. This is Elon's messaging when it comes to the timeline for full self-driving. And I'm seeing in many um news stories that autonomous driving comes millions of cars by the end of 2020 or middle of 2026. No, like, how many times are we going to fall for this? Like, at some point, you either have to modify your messaging or you have to deliver the goods. And if you can't deliver the goods, then just modify your messaging. What full self-driving can do is pretty amazing. It's not level 5 autonomy, but it's pretty amazing. There are some things that it does that I'm not 100% comfortable with, but for the most part, uh, it's an impressive feat that Tesla has put together. Why would you want to tarnish that by over-promising? Eventually, it's going to come true. Like, you can't you can't continue to say this year after year after year and for it to not eventually come true. However, we're at this point, we're at 9 years. It can't just be it can't continue to be around the corner without some sort of repercussion. So, what do you think? What do you think? Are we gonna get full self-driving next year? Should there be some sort of repercussion? Like, I mean, I don't know what could possibly happen, to Elon. He's the company's largest individual shareholder. He's the CEO. He has a board that's loyal to him. It'd be hard for him to be held accountable in, like, a meaningful way. So, I'm just like, at this point, we've heard it so many times, and I've been fooled so many times by this. Every single time he says it on an earnings call, I greet it with extreme skepticism. But I also recognize that full self-driving is pretty amazing. It's not perfect. It's not great. I mean, it's not, I shouldn't say that. It's not perfect. Um, that's not fair. To say it's not great is not fair. It is what it is. But they have accomplished so much. Let's highlight those accomplishments and not so much highlight what it might be someday in the future, which probably won't be a year and a half from now, right? All right. There's a little bit more for the answer to the previous question of robotaxi. I don't know that they actually answer the original question in this, but I'm gonna play the other relevant part of the answer. There's a lot that I cut out, by the way. If again, go back and listen to it. But I thought this was fairly relevant in terms of the cybercab and robotaxi itself.
Thank you.
If the question was on CyberCab itself, we're,
Yeah.
we're in B sample validation now.
Yeah. We should ask that question too.
Yeah, we have our first like big builds coming at the end of this quarter, within Q2, and then in the coming months they start to large scale installation of all the equipment in Giga Texas, with still on schedule for production next year.
Yeah, and I just want to also clarify, because I think people don't understand. They think that there is no new building being built, and where is Cybercab going to
No,
be?
it's in the Giga.
It's within the same factory.
Yeah.
It's happening and people don't know it's just happening upstairs and all along the lines while we're still building the Model Ys and Cyber trucks every day.
Yeah, it's worth noting that the Tesla Gigafactory in Austin is 3 times the size of the Pentagon.
Including the garden.
Yeah, including the Ground Zero garden. So I go visit the Pentagon. I'm like, this building used to look big, but anymore.
There was I don't have anything more to add on that previous answer, by the way, but there was a question that I'm just going to summarize it for you. The question was, when is FSD going to be available for personal use? The answer was, and the end of 2025 in some cities with regulatory approval. And Elon quantified, the full self-driving, the level at which you could go to sleep and wake up at your destination and get there safely. So to me, that's level 5 autonomy. Maybe you can stretch that and say it's level 4, but it's level 5. So we'll see. By the end of the year, we have 7 months left to see if that's true or not. Hopefully it is. I'd love it if it was. Don't get me wrong. I'm not hoping that full self-driving fails. I'm just hoping that expectations are properly set. And speaking of expectations being set, here's a clip of Elon. This is later in the earnings call, but here's a clip of Elon talking about Model Ys being spit out of the factory and then driving to your home to be delivered, like completely autonomously. So let's listen to that clip.
And I'm confident also that later this year, the first Model Y will drive itself all the way to the customer. So from a factory in Boston and our one here in Fremont, California, I'm confident that from both factories, we'll be able to drive directly to a customer from the factory.
Cool delivery.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if this is something you want, because it's not something I want. I don't want the car to be, like I said, spit out of the factory and then drive to my house where it is at more of a risk of having paint damage, getting into an accident, and delaying the actual delivery of my car, windshield damage, or, and this is going to be a real shocker here, or showing up at my house and it being dirty. Like, I don't want to spend, with taxes and fees and everything, $56,000 on a car, and then find out that, when I get it, it's dirty on the outside. That doesn't sound like a fun experience. I mean, it's possible that they can take it and clean it up at the service centers and get it to you, but even then it still delays, so that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But, what do you think? Would you like that? It's a neat concept. It's a neat idea, but in practice, I don't, aside from the paint chips or the window chips or whatever, the cosmetic damage that might happen, I just don't want that many miles on my car. If I was getting a car from Fremont and I lived in, let's say, Maryland, I don't want that car to drive all the way across the country and put all those miles on it before I get a chance to use it. Like, it's already used when you get it, they say the value drops. How much does the value drop when there's, however many thousands of miles on it? That doesn't seem like a very practical solution. Next up, we're going to hear about more affordable vehicles, and are we still on target for Tesla to release more affordable vehicles this year?
The next question is Tesla still on track for releasing more affordable models this year? Or will you be focusing on simplified versions to enhance affordability, similar to the rear-wheel drive Cybertruck?
Yeah, we're still planning to release models this year. As with all launches, we're working through like the last minute issues that pop up. We're knocking them down one by one. At this point, I would say that ramp maybe might be a little slower than we had hoped initially, but there's nothing, just kind of given that turmoil that exists in the industry right now. But there's nothing that's blocking us from starting production within the next within the timeline we laid out in the opening remarks. And I will say it's important to emphasize that, as we've said all along, the full utilization of our factories is the primary goal for these new products. And so flexibility of what we can do within the form factor and the design of it is really limited to what we can do on our existing lines rather than building new ones. But we've been targeting the low cost of ownership. Monthly payment is the biggest differentiator for our vehicles. And that's why we're focused on bringing these new models with the lowest price to the market within the constraints I just outlined.
I'm a little confused. Is it going to be new products, or is it going to be a more affordable version of the existing products? Because he says new products, but he also says that they're constrained on the form factor because of the current lines that they have. And it is possible to build different vehicle body styles on the same line. It just takes a little bit of tweaking in the line to make that happen. But that doesn't sound revolutionary to me. That seems more like an evolutionary step in terms of vehicles. And listen, if you're looking at a $30,000 car, it's not going to be revolutionary by a lot of standards. It's sad to say this, honestly, that a $30,000 car or a $30,000 EV is a basic EV. And that's kind of a sad thing to say. It shouldn't be that way. I bought a really nice car way back when for a bit more than $30,000, and I honestly did not think I would ever spend that much money on another car again. the next car I bought was $40,000. The next car I bought after that was $48,000. So obviously, I'm out of touch. Let's go ahead and move on to our next question.
The next question is, how is Tesla positioning itself to flexibly adapt to global economic risks in the form of tariffs, political biases, etc.?
As Elon said, we've been supply chain team been at it for a while. We continue to mitigate global economic risks like tariffs and political biases by regionalizing part supply near its factories in North America, Berlin, and Shanghai. For example, in North America, our high-volume vehicle programs have over 85% North America content, and Shanghai vehicles have over 95% local content. Berlin has similar levels of regionalization as North America when you exclude the battery, and we are working on regionalizing the battery as well. This is a pre-pandemic strategy that we accelerated post-pandemic through supply diversification, dual sourcing, vertical integration, advanced analytics, and local partnerships to ensure supply chain resilience and production stability. Having said that, we are not 100% insulated, and these tariff risks are higher on our low volume platforms than the high volume ones.
Yeah. In fact, there's no more vertically integrated car company than Tesla. I mean, we're the most vertically integrated car company since, Henry Ford back in the day when they were doing mining iron and stuff, and growing rubber trees. So, we're not growing rubber trees and mining iron yet, but we have built a lithium refinery in South Texas, and it's the biggest lithium refinery outside of China, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Once it's started, yeah. But its output potential would be the biggest lithium refinery outside.
Yeah, and we've got space to expand it if we need to build more.
Right. So, and then we've got the cathode refinery in Austin next to the Gigafactory. We've got to figure out what to do about the anode. It's an ongoing subject of discussion. The best of all possible worlds would be figuring out how to have no anode. Best anode, best part being no part. That's the dream of the lithium batteries, to be anode, not have an anode. But either way, we better have the anode, the cathode, and the lithium, and the electrolyte, and the separator to make a cell. But there's no other car company that is building lithium refineries and cathode refineries. We're ridiculously vertically integrated, and thus our best position to protect against supply chain disruptions.
Yeah.
Right. Lonnie, do you want to talk about the progress in this one?
Yeah, certainly for our in-house cells, we've multi-sourced every component, and we have every part coming from at least 2 different countries of origin, which is we started this. The supply chain team and the engineering team worked together on this for the last couple of years to put that together. It's not something we did in a couple of months. This is years of work. So we're in a good position to take advantage of that, and the insourcing of lithium and cathode, they're the 2 most critical parts of the battery. That's right in our backyard, and we're totally insulated from
oil. It needs to be in operation.
It needs to be in operation. Once they're running late.
We also make our own cells, by the way. So
right.
Cell production. If you look, there's you make the anode, the cathode, the lithium, the electrolyte separator, the can, and then you got to put all that together in the cell factory. And there are entire companies that all they do is produce cells, but they don't do the other stuff. They don't refine lithium or the cathode, or so our cell production is going quite well, and I think we're currently sort of the lowest cost per kilowatt hour.
Yeah, for all the cells we purchase in North America.
Yeah, so it's
those cost to us.
Yeah, so we have the lowest cost per kilowatt hour, all things considered. So the Tesla cell is the most competitive cell. For a kilowatt hour according to a car, if it's a Tesla cell, it's lower cost than if it's a supplier cell.
Yeah, and the plan this year is to really build up that base. Getting to lowest cost is
um, it's the hardest challenge for cell manufacturing. It's relatively easy to build a flashy product that does one thing well. To build something at high volume and low cost is super difficult, and we're kind of using that as a base to then build off and add performance in different areas for new products coming out.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I mean, to Elon's point, there's a lot of advantages for regionalization. The most important thing is we're not tying up working capital for 6 to 8 weeks on the ocean. If there's a design change, then everything that's in transit basically has to be scrapped. Secondly, port disruptions, as we saw during COVID, can be very expensive because slight disconnects can shut down production. So then your only option is costly air expedite. It also gives us resilience in supply chain. If one region is down, we can bridge with others. It's more work to set up in the beginning, but it's critical to have when the need arises. Having said that, it's unrealistic to assume 100% regionalization across the board for specialized areas such as semiconductors. In such cases, our team works very closely with our partners to ensure we have strategic banks in place and a disruption doesn't impact production while we stand up the regional manufacturing for that particular commodity.
And I'll say like on the rest of the vehicle, like Elon was talking about with cells, we're also heavily vertically integrated. Import ingots, and turn them into castings. We recycle those in melt centers. The same thing with plastics, but it doesn't mean we're not exposed. We do have some areas where we use rare earth magnets. And we've been working for years to find alternative sources and bring those up, as well as we have our induction machines. And as we've mentioned in the past, we're working on ferrite motors for some time. So, like as Karn said, with our heavy regionalization percentages, we're definitely like the lowest. Exposed to this, but we're not completely immune, as Piebald mentioned in his opening remarks.
Okay. That was a little bit longer of an answer than I would normally let go. But I think it was a good answer. It's important for these companies to, for a lot of reasons, not just for tariffs, to have localization in terms of suppliers. And, one of those reasons I thought was a good point is having, parts on a ship that are on their way to the factory for 8 to 12 weeks. That takes a while. So, yeah, I thought that's a good answer. All right, let's go ahead and move on to our next question.
Thank you very much. The next question is, did Tesla experience any meaningful changes in order inflow rate in Q1 relating to all of the rumors of brand damage?
So in Q1, as mentioned earlier, we took the best-selling car of the last 2 years and ramped up all 4 of our global factories. And in less than 8 weeks, we've already gotten to the rate of our previous Model Ys in the factories. So just kudos again to the team for the great job there. And despite the economic strain and negative articles that in California in Q1, Tesla remained the best-selling car, not just EV. And additionally, we had a record number of test drives globally in Q1 as well. So interest remains high. And so right now we continue to see, good interest still in the vehicle.
yeah, I mean, Tesla's not immune to sort of the macro demand for cars.
Yes.
So when there is economic uncertainty, people generally want to pause on buying, doing a major capital purchase like a car. But as far as absent macro issues, we don't see any reduction in demand.
Correct. And that's where we continue to focus on affordability. And it's a fundamental focus there.
They kind of answered the question here. I will say that, yes, they shut down all lines of the Model Y and all 4 factories. And he mentions that they're back up to production rate at the factory. Production does not equal sales. Now, you don't want to have a lot of inventory on hand. That's not good. But that doesn't mean that they've sold all those cars. And I think the question was more about brand damage than it was about sales. Like it was, did the brand damage have anything to do with the sales? And they came up with some reasons, and some of them are very legitimate, I think, for why sales were down. But that doesn't answer the question. Are they seeing any damage because of Elon's involvement with the Trump administration, his behavior outside of Tesla on Twitter and other places that he's speaking? Did they see anything in regards to that damaged the brand? And I think that that's a legitimate question. In a lot of ways, there reasons why we don't know what Mary Barra or Carlos isn't the head of Stellantis anymore, but Mary Barra or Jim Farley, we don't really know their politics because it hurts the brand, and they're not willing to do that. So even if their politics were something that aligned with mine or aligned with yours, it really doesn't matter. Like the goal is not to alienate one part of the the country or a specific part of the country, especially when that audience can afford to buy your vehicles. You want to keep as neutral as possible on that. Also, that helps keep shareholders happy as well. All right, let's move on to our next question. And I should say that our next questions are going to come from analysts now. We're to that part of the presentation.
The next question comes from Emmanuel Rosner at Wolf. Emmanuel, please unmute yourself.
Great. Thanks for taking my question. So Elon, the public version of the FSD software still has a decent amount of, I guess, intermittent human interventions that are required. So what's still required for the software on your end to get to a level where it doesn't need to be supervised? And I'm asking that in the context of obviously the June launch being in the next couple of months. What still needs to happen?
And we are working on a number of items to improve the robustness. Yeah. We are aware of the interventions that are happening in the public bills, and that's why we are hardcore burning it down. And really just picking some initial launch city helps us focus on solving all the issues that we face here. For example, we're focusing on Austin, we're not solving all the issues that customers in Boston or somewhere else might face. And then here we just have a big list of all the issues, just burn it down, and that's what the team is working on, along with other sort of redundancy issues. For example, if one of the computers goes down right now in the customer fleet, it would throw the red hands and ask you to take over, but we don't want that kind of situation. So you're solving both the reliability issues of the autonomy software and also the reliability issues of the system software together for Austin.
Yeah, it really we just work through a long tail of unusual interventions. So, and these are really very rare. Like as I was saying earlier, you have intervention every 10,000 miles. I mean, that's a lot of driving you got to do to even find one case where that happens.
Yeah, and some interventions are happening due to systematic missing functionality. For example, for handling emergency vehicles correctly, you don't need to consume audio as an input. But then the customer-facing versions don't have audio input, but the version that's going to be in Austin will have audio input and so on.
Okay, but would you have remote operators, for example?
I mean, every now and then, if a car gets stuck or something, someone will unblock it. But it's just because we are a bit conservative and tend towards more safety than even if we get stuck every now and then. We do have remote support, but it's not going to be required for safe operation. If anything, it's just required for more availability.
Anyway, it's only a couple months away, so you can just see it for yourself in a couple months in Austin.
I'm sure that Elon is getting these numbers of 10,000 miles between interventions. I'm sure he's getting that from somewhere. I would like to know specifically where. Is that the fleet as a whole? Is that, their test fleet? Is that advanced software and not current software? Is that hardware 4 vehicles or hardware 3 vehicles? Is that on one specific model of vehicle? It is interesting that I have some people who will message me when I talk about this stuff, and they'll say, "Hey, I don't have any issues with full self-driving." And a lot of folks, when I asked a couple months ago, how often do you use it? A lot of folks are like 80 to 90% of the time. Like, that's a lot. And that's it. That's a really good experience. And I have others, and I would put myself in this group when I have had the chance to use full self-driving, and maybe sometime this summer um, I'll pay for a month of full self-driving and test it again. But I've had other people who don't have that experience, and I haven't had that experience. Like, I have a scuff on my wheel from last year when I was using full self-driving, because it got too close to a curb and it hit it, and now I have a little bit of rash there. Now, is it a big deal? No, but I didn't love that it happened, for sure. Um, it's not an emergency. It's not and like nobody was going to die, but it damaged my car a little bit. And around that time, Tesla had a bunch of these incidents, and they basically said, "Yeah, if this happens with full self driving on, we're not going to cover it. You're responsible for that." If from my point of view, if you're going to say it's 10,000 miles without intervention, then in those 10,000 miles, if something happens, you should be willing to put your name on that. Now, if it's like a blatant disregard of safety, okay, there's cameras in the car. We can, somebody sitting in the back seat or something like that. But if it runs into a pylon, which it did, and the person who filmed that video was a Tesla employee and they got fired, or if it, scrapes against a concrete like mine did, and get a little road rash on the wheel. If you're not willing to put your name on that, it really doesn't really mean anything to me. If I was driving a friend's car and I damaged it, I would offer to pay for it. I would insist on paying for it. And so it kind of seems to me, if you're not willing to put your name on it when it does act up and there is an incident, then maybe we're not where we're at. You're just throwing out numbers. And again, I have to go back to this all too many times. What Tesla's doing is amazing. Like, their full self-driving is amazing. Like, I'm not down on it. I'm just like the way that it is messaged. I have not had an incident, and my oldest, she has full self-driving on her Model 3. I have not had an incident with full self-driving, or I have not gone. I have gone hundreds of miles with full self-driving, and I've had to intervene. Not That's my experience. I can't speak for everybody else who's driven it way more than me, but that's just my experience. Hundreds of miles between interventions, and sometimes it's tens of miles, and some of that has to do with level of comfort with the technology. Like, how far are you willing to let it go before you take over? I'm not willing to go very far, but because I don't want to hurt anybody or damage my car, especially if Tesla's not going to pay for it. So I just think this 10,000 number is interesting. Again, not been my experience. And that would mean, like, if we'll go back and use Elon's words here. If Elon says that you will, most people drive 10,000 miles a year, which is probably between, I'd say 12 and 15, but most people drive 10,000 miles a year. Okay. So you're telling me in 1 year, you could drive pretty much the entire year without having an intervention? That number doesn't seem right to me. That seems like a very optimistic number that came from somewhere, and I would like to know where it came from. All right, let's move on to our next analyst question.
Yeah. Wanted to come back actually to the robotaxi then. Do you have a sense on how many cars or how big the scale will be initially and how that might ramp up? I know you're targeting, millions of vehicles in the second half kind of next year. But initially at launch, how many vehicles would be reasonable? And is it going to be as simple as if one goes to Austin, let's say in late June or July, you'll be able to request?
Yeah. We're still debating the exact number to start off on day one, but it's like, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 vehicles on day one. And watch it carefully, then scale it up rapidly after that. So, we want to make sure that we're paying very close attention the first time this happens. But yeah, you'll be able to end of June or July, just go to Austin and order autonomous drive.
That's a good question and a good answer. Let's move on to our next question.
Great. The next question comes from George at Canaccord.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. It has to do with FSD pricing. Could we envision when you launch unsupervised FSD that there could be sort of a multi-tiered pricing approach to unsupervised versus supervised, similar to what you did with autopilot versus FSD in the past? Thank you.
I mean, this is something which we've been thinking about. I mean, just so you know, for people who have been trying FSD and who've been using FSD, they think even the current pricing is too cheap because for $99, you're basically getting a personal show.
I don't know any reasonable person that thinks that $99 a month is a good deal for mostly anything, maybe your car payment, but any like subscription service, I that's a lot. That's a lot of money. Not saying it's not a value. I'm just saying if I had a subscription service that did something for me, like washed my dishes, like if I had to pay for my dishwasher $100 a month for it to wash my dishes, okay, fine. That saves me some time, but I'm not going to say it's too cheap. I'm going to say this cost me $100 a month to wash my dishes. That's ridiculous. I wish it was cheaper. And if they offered it to me for cheaper, I would definitely jump onto that new pricing plan. So I don't know. I don't know who's out there going, hey, I want to spend, $100 a month is fine. I'd really like to spend 150. That doesn't seem reasonable. But I do think that and I've said this in the past, that we should have a tiered pricing for full self-driving. If you want to put it on the network, you should pay more because you're going to make money off of it. If you don't want to put it on the network, you should pay less. And I think it should be significantly less. So that's just me. All right. Continuing on with this question.
Yeah. I mean, we do need to give people more time to like, if they want to look at, like a key breakpoint is, can you read your text messages or not?
Yes.
Can you write a text message or not? Because obviously people are doing this, by the way, with unautonomous cars all the time. And if you just go for a drive down the highway and you'll see people texting while driving, doing 80 miles an hour.
And putting the makeup on at the same time.
Yeah. Putting on makeup, doing their hair with the mirror down, and texting and driving at 80 miles an hour. This is a common occurrence. So people eating lunch, you name it, shaving, So anyway, but right now the car is very insistent that you pay attention to the road, so that which reduces the value somewhat, because it's very rigorous about you paying attention to the road, and we'll gradually lighten up on that with every few weeks or every month we'll relax that a little bit, make it so you can be more and more able to do things you want to do, and not have the car demand your rigid attention. So that value, it'll really be profound when you can basically do whatever you want, including sleep, and then that $99 is going to seem like the best $99 you've ever spent in your life.
I have a question. If you're paying $99 now, and you can't do those things like shave, put on your makeup, take a nap, is this the 99? Is this the worst $99 you've ever spent in your life? Is like I agree with you, or I agree with Elon that if it could do all these things, $99 is probably a pretty good value, but he can't. So is that an admission that maybe it's priced for full self-driving as it's intended to be, and maybe because we're not quite there yet, the price should be cheaper? Let's jump into our next question.
Colin Langan from Wells Fargo, while Adam figures out his audio. Colin, please unmute yourself.
Oh, great. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. You're still sticking with the vision-only approach. A lot of autonomous people still have a lot of concerns about, sun glare, fog, and dust. Any color on how you anticipate on getting around those issues? Because my understanding, it kind of blinds the camera when you get glare and stuff.
Actually, it does not blind the camera. We use an approach which is direct photon count. So when you see a processed image, so the image that goes from the sort of photon counter, so the silicon photon counter, that then goes through a digital signal processor or image signal processor. That's normally what happens, and then then the image that you see looks all washed out, because if you point the camera at the sun, the post processing of the photon counting washes things out. It actually adds noise. So quite a big breakthrough that we made some time ago was to go with direct photon counting and bypass the image signal processor. And then you can drive pretty much straight at the sun, and you can also see in what appears to be the blackest of night. And then in fog we can see as well as people can, probably better, but I'd say probably slightly better than people, than the average person anyway. Yeah.
So the camera is able to see when there's direct glare on it.
Yeah.
This is new to me, and I thought this was super cool. So let's see. You know what? This is a good place to end it. There was 2 other questions, but I don't think they really gave up much more information than we already have. So we'll just end it here. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around and listening for the last hour and 15 minutes. Really appreciate that. While I was recording this, because again, I started this on Tuesday at like 9:00 at night. It is now Thursday at 9:00 at night. Almost 9:00 at night. It's 8:49. While I was listening or re-listening back through the clips with Elon and the team talking, Slate Auto just announced their pickup truck. So I think I'm going to release this today, and on Friday or Saturday, we're going to talk about Slate Audio, and then all of the things that I've been doing that have been keeping me busy since Christmas, and it's been a lot. I've had promotional testing, which today, by the way, was my final bit of promotional testing. We'll find out where everybody ranks probably next week sometime. So that's been that involves a great deal of study, like an entire textbook of information, a bunch of like 16 or 17 SOPs. It might even be more than that. It might even be in the 20s SOPs. And then 2 other books that you have to read and study that are kind of like businessy books. And then on top of that, we have a practical test that we have to take. And then there's interviews and a presentation, and it's a lot. It's a lot. The last couple of weeks has been a lot. And then I'm also wrapping up on Sunday or Monday, hopefully. The training for my second job, that's coming to an end as well. So hopefully shows will go back to some more regularity. So I appreciate everybody who has stuck around and has been patient with me over the last few months. That's really do appreciate it. It means a lot. I have some interviews that I'm working on that are I don't know if I'm going to have any interviews in May, but I'll definitely have some things in June. Actually, that's not true. I was just talking to somebody, messaging somebody back and forth on LinkedIn today, just a few hours ago, actually. So there might be something in May. But we're gonna go back to our news schedule. We have, the earnings calls for other companies as well. So I think things are going to smooth out. And, I'm not saying I'm never going to get busy again, because that would be, unreasonable, because that's just kind of how life works. But I can tell you that I have 802 days left before I retire. And that is, it ends up being like 2 years, 2 months, a week, and 3 days, and 11 hours and 7 minutes, if we want to get down to the details. I will never test for another promotion for the rest of my career. And in some ways that feels very sad, but in other ways it feels absolutely liberating. I'm not going to lie. I do not enjoy the testing process. So, yeah, I foresee going forward more regularity. And not to say that, there won't be a couple weeks where it gets really busy, but it won't be like it has been the last 3 months. The last 3 months have been to grind for sure. But I do thank you, everybody, for your patience. All right. I will talk to everyone Friday or Saturday. So thanks so much.